at Teen Say.
Can you guys all say Teen Say on 3? 1, 2, 3. Teen
Hi, I'm Marianne with Teen Say. Today we have an actor, director, and a producer. Wow. Stan Livingston, also known as Chip from My Three Sons, a long-running sitcom that he was on, a childhood actor, and the producer and host of The Actor's Journey for Kids and for Adults. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Marianne. How are you doing?
Good. We're excited to talk to you. So the kids, you know, the teenagers out there are TikTok stars and YouTube stars and, you know, but I don't think they know the real business. So we thought we would have you teach them a little about the real business. So let's say they want to be a real star and they want to be on a show. How would they get started?
The internet is kind of a new place to be, but it's all the same thing. You know, you've got an idea, you have creativity, you have a personality, and that's kind of what you're bringing to whatever it is you're doing on the internet. And it's a way for people to find you. And, you know, like people watch TV in the old days, like when My Three Sons was on, we had 60, 80 million people a week watching us every week for 12 years.
Wow.
But same thing, you know, for the internet. I don't know how long people will last. That's another question.
How long in the business?
65 years.
Wow. A lot of knowledge to share. We appreciate that.
On September 19th, My Three Sons will be on the air 60 years. It's the date it aired was September 19th, 1960. So 60 years and My Three Sons. Hard to believe.
And it's still on the air.
And yeah, it's on TV every morning, Me TV, and then locally, I think there are local channels that show it too. But the network that has it right now is Me TV. But yeah, we've been on TV Land, Nick at Night, Lifetime Channel, you name it. I mean, it's probably about 10 different cable networks that have, you know, had it over the years. But yeah, it's one, besides being on the air 60 years, it actually has been. It's one of the few shows that has never gone off the air. It was prime time for 12 years, about 15 years in syndication, TV Land, or Nick at Night for 10 years, TV Land for 10 years, and then it kind of went out onto, like I said, different Odyssey Channel, Ion, Lifetime, Me TV, all the different cable channels that have been around.
What was your favorite line on My Three Sons as Chip? Or your favorite episode?
I think my favorite episode, I'm obviously in it, but I thought the most creative idea, and because it was light comedy, it was an unusual show. The story revolved around Tramp, you know, kind of going off on his own one day, and he goes to a construction site, and you know how dogs pick up sticks? He picks up a stick and brings it back to the house, except it's a piece of dynamite.
Oh.
He brings a piece of percussion dynamite into the house and he drops it and it goes down the stairs. Uncle, I think it was Bub back then, you know, he sees it and he throws it into the trash, and then somehow the trash goes over and Tramp gets it again. And this whole thing, it's actually, you're sitting on the edge of your seat because this dynamite could go off at any second. I just thought, what a great idea, you know, just the near misses of everybody coming almost into contact with this dynamite or doing something with it they shouldn't do, and it never goes off, of course. But yeah, that was probably my favorite episode. That was from the first year.
How old were you then?
Well, I was probably 9 when we first started shooting and turned 10 that year. That was 1960.
Wow, yeah, it was really exciting to see this dynamite at 10 years old, yeah?
Yeah, well, it was just a stick that was made to look like dynamite. It
Right, but I mean, yeah, just the whole concept, yeah.
Yeah, just prop dynamite. But when you see it in a show, it's exciting.
Yeah.
It'd be exciting if your own dog brought a piece of dynamite into your house and you didn't know it.
Yeah, I bet.
Then when you find out afterwards,
I gather you're an animal lover.
I am. Yeah, dog lover. It's, you know, people do become stars, and whether it's on TV or in the movies, sometimes they're there for a couple movies and then they disappear back into the ether, or it could be like Clint Eastwood, who started on TV in the 1950s, and here it is, 60 years later, 70 years later, the guy's still making movies, and he's still one of the A-list producers, directors, and stars. So we'll see how it shakes out for the internet. but there are a lot of people out there that have found a niche there, and they've got a show, and they've got millions of followers.
Yeah.
It just seems like today the attention span of the audience is less. So I
Yeah,
don't want
what
to
is
call
it,
them.
like a minute for a video?
Well, it could be one song, and then that's the interview. But that happened in the record industry too. That's where the term "one-hit wonder" came from. I mean, you can be a fabulously huge success, and that'll be your only record. you don't know that. You think it's opening a career for you, and it's always going to be that way. Those songs had an impact on the music industry, made a lot of people a lot of money, and garnered a career for the people that did them. For 60 years later, these guys still are out on cruise ships singing "See You in September." I'm sure they're quite sick of it, but without that, you would have had nothing. You'd probably
Right.
be a bartender or something. In the case of my three sons, it's the same thing.
Yeah, tell us
I
about
did it-
your career. You started with water babies at 6 months old.
Yeah, my mom sent me to a swim school in Hollywood. She was afraid I'd drown or something if I was around water, so I went there. But the lady who owned the swimming pool was very entrepreneurial. She had a porthole cut in the side of her pool so photographers could go down the steps and shoot underwater pictures of kids underwater. And she put together a little show where we'd ride, remember those little pedal cars and bicycles and a swing set underwater. And
Wow.
they would photograph that. And it ended up in a lot of era magazines like Vogue, McCall's. There were a lot of, this kind of went along with TV, but that was another way people got information, were entertained, were these magazines. And somebody had a show called You Asked For It, saw it, which was a weekly, I guess it was weekly TV series where people would write in and say what they wanted to see, and they would do an episode on it, or at least a segment. And we were one of the segments. So, they sent a TV crew out and photographed us diving off the high board. You have to remember, we're like little kids, like 4 or 5 years old. Diving
Yeah, I'm
off.
sure you didn't do that at 6 months old.
I did. Not
At
6
6?
months, but at 5 years old, I'm diving off like a 20-foot platform into the water. And then, riding
So you
the
stuck
cars.
to those swim lessons, eh?
Yeah. Well, what it led to, that show, a lot of people saw it and then sent their kids to learn how to swim at the schools. Her name was Jen Lovin, and her swim school was right on Hollywood Boulevard by Western Avenue. And for years and years and years, she was there before I came along, and for years and years afterwards, she was there teaching babies how to swim. In fact, my own daughter, when I finally grew up, got married and had Samantha went there, and Jen Lovin taught her how to swim.
Wow.
But her entrepreneurial instincts brought a lot of Hollywood type people, that actors, producers, directors, casting directors, agents.
How much were swim lessons there? No, I'm just kidding. I don't want to.
Probably just a couple bucks, it was like mid-50s. So what happened was, an agent was there and saw me and thought I was really cute, and I was pretty extroverted, so she thought I had the right qualities to, try and become a child actor, and worked on my mom and finally convinced her to let her represent me. Her name was Tina Hill, and Tina became my agent. And, the first couple things I went out on, I think she just wanted me to get some experience on the set. I was hired, along with a group of kids, and basically was just an extra. And I did maybe 4 or 5 shows as an extra. And then one of the shows I got sent out on was called Ozzie and Harriet, which, for your watchers or viewers, it was another TV series that was on from the mid-50s through pretty much the mid-70s. It's actually the longest running sitcom ever on TV.
Wow.
14 years.
Were you on it for 14 years?
No. I was on it for about 4 or 5 years. So this was probably 1955, 56. I was hired as an extra, and the story was the dad, Ozzie Nelson, to make some extra money for his family during Christmas time, bought a bunch of Christmas trees, had them in his backyard. He would have people come over and select a tree, and it looked like a mini forest in the backyard. And, it's not like a joke, it's kind of soft humor, but, he's showing this guy a Christmas tree, and then all of a sudden about 6 little kids come marching out of this forest of trees in his backyard. We all have backpacks and sleeping bags on. And, we go filing past them. He's like, what? Kind of thing. But anyway, we shot
So
it.
you guys wanted to camp by his Christmas trees.
Yeah, we wanted to camp, and he had a forest, so that was the joke. So anyway, we shot it a couple times. Then he pulled me aside and he said, "I want you to say this line when you come out. Right when you get to this spot, just stop for a second and say this line, and then keep going." And so I said, "Okay." And so we shot it again, and I got to that spot and I went, sure was mighty good camping in there, Mr. Nelson. And then I walked away. Well, that's what started my career, because I had now set a line. I'm not an extra anymore, and
Wow.
I was able to be Taft-Hartley, which means you have the option to join the union, which I did. And Ozzy came up to my mom afterwards and said, "Wow, I really like him. Could you leave your contact information with my secretary? Go over there and give it to her, and I want to have him come back." And you hear that all the time in show business. I'll have you back, or I'll see you again, or we'll do lunch. Well, he was true to his word. About a month later, they called and hired me again to be on the show, and I had some lines, and by then I had joined the Screen Actors Guild. And so from 1955, 56 to 1960, when I landed the role of Chip on My Three Sons, I was a neighborhood kid on Ozzie and Harriet, did maybe 4 or 5 shows a year for the Nelsons. So that got the ball rolling for me. And then because of my agent, I started getting movies and other TV shows that were out of that era. And, by the time I was 10 years old, I had a pretty good resume. Also in that area with, if you look up stuff about me, it's not there, because I didn't put anything up mainly because I didn't have any information on it or never saw it. All I had was a picture. And, but how it came about, this TV pilot that I did in 1958 before My Three Sons, and while I was still doing Ozzie and Harriet, was in between shots when I wasn't working, and if I didn't have to go to school, I would wander around the studio a lot, just see what other people were doing, or wander through somebody's set and watch them. Well, the set next door to us had a horse in the back.
Wow.
And so I walked around, and the handler was there, and he was really friendly. He says, "You want to brush him? I'll show you how to brush him." So he gave me a couple brushes and showed me how to do it. Then he gave me some carrots, and I got to feed the horse. So I thought that was really cool. And anyway, the horse was Mr. Ed. I didn't know.
Oh my God. Wow, I remember that show.
Yeah. So I met Alan Young then too. So that was
Well,
cool.
just in case they don't know, Mr. Ed was the talking horse.
A talking horse. A horse is a horse, of course, of course.
And you also
Famous
met
TV
Lassie,
series.
right?
Later. Well, that was actually one of the first things that I did where I didn't have any lines. I was the show evolved. There was an original boy on it who kind of grew up on the show, and the show was probably about 5, 6 years old. And the kid who was 12 was now 18. And they kind of wanted to move off and bring a younger kid on. And so it's called the transition episode. And so they brought in new people, which is John Provost, played Timmy. And it was the episode where the Tommy Reddick character, I forgot what his name was on the show, but he was leaving. And he leaves Lassie, lets Timmy have Lassie so he can continue to live. But Timmy doesn't like the farm, doesn't know if he's going to like it, and he runs away. And I don't remember how he gets in the water. I think he falls off a bridge or something, and he's out in the middle of a pond with this bridge or something, and he's flailing around and drowning, and Lassie sees him. Well, that wasn't John. That was me out there in the water flailing around and pretending like I was drowning. So that was one.
And we know you had swim lessons, so you definitely weren't drowning.
However, that being said, I got stuck in the mud that was in this pond. I almost did drown. The suction action got a hold of me, and I could hardly come up. But anyway, yeah, it was like, I was definitely taking on water. But I survived, and that was one of my first little things. But anyway, walking around the lot, I walked around to another show that was across.
Wait, so were you on Mr. Ed as well, or did you just pass?
No, I was just playing with the horse.
Wow, this is great.
So I walked over on another set, and they had a dog there, and it was a Basset Hound. And I remember I'd go and play with them, and I kind of made friends with the animal handler, whose name was Frank Inn. And I'd play with him. And then one day, one of the actors on the show walked up to me, and he said, "Who are you?" And I said, "Well, I told him my name's Stanley Livingston." he, started asking me a bunch of questions, and I'm like wondering, uh-oh. And then he says, "Where's your mom? Where's your mother?" And I go, "Am I in trouble?" He goes, no, you're not in trouble. He goes, "But I'd like to meet your mom." And so I said, "Okay." So he said, "Well, where is she?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing Ozzie and Harriet, so I'll just take you over there." So I took him back and introduced this guy to my mom. I had no idea who he was. I knew he was supposed to be on that show that I wandered onto their set. And my mom almost fell over backwards because the guy that I introduced her to was a huge, probably one of the biggest child stars ever, a guy named Jackie Cooper, who was in movies all through the 30s, 40s. He was one of the original Rascals and grew up.
Wow.
He was in his 30s and was now a producer director. If your audience, well, probably not even your audience, when they made Superman, the one with Christopher Reeve, he's the guy that plays Perry White in it. The guy who was the head of the newspaper. That's
Right.
Jackie Cooper. So he had an acting
Wow.
career his whole life too. But anyway, I stopped talking to my mom, and they talked for about 20, 30 minutes, and then he went away. And then about 2 months later, at the end of 1958, actually in December of 58, I ended up doing a TV pilot for him that he had written. And what it was called Skippy. And how Skippy was related to him. When he was a child actor, about the same age as me, he did a movie called Skippy, in which he played Skippy.
Oh.
And the movie went on to win an Academy Award. He got nominated for an Academy Award until the mid-70s, I think, or early 80s. He was the youngest person ever nominated for an Academy Award.
Wow.
Until they did a movie called Kramer versus Kramer.
I remember that.
Yeah, well, that little kid got nominated, and I think he was a year younger than Jackie Cooper was when he did Skippy. So Jackie Cooper wasn't the youngest anymore, but he had a stellar career. Anyway, he had the idea of turning Skippy, the movie, into a TV series, hired me to play him, Skippy, and we did the pilot. But the funny part was, this is in 1958. I never saw it. Because unlike now, where people, or even in the 70s, people would put their auditions or, the scenes that they could get on a videotape, and that's what you would hand the casting person so they could see your work. This is before the internet. And then DVDs came along, and now everything's just file-based and it's on the internet. And if you want to watch somebody's performance, you go to the website and they've uploaded all the files of the work that they've done. But
So much easier, right?
That. So much easier. Well, back then, to tell you how hard it was, if somebody was going to watch your work, first of all, you would have to get a copy of it. And the copy only existed on a film reel. It's film. And the only way you could show it to somebody here or anywhere in Hollywood was you would have to rent a theater at night after midnight and invite whoever you wanted to see it to come to the theater after the theater closed. You would four-wall the theater. In other words, you'd book it for a couple hours, and then you would hire the projectionist to project it. So that's how it was done. But anyway, I never
who would
went
do
to
that? Not like the moms and the actors. The agents would do that.
Well, mainly the reason you didn't do it is you would never get a hold of the film reel. Fortunately, Jackie Cooper, lent it to my parents so that they could go show producers my work. It's probably how I got Please Don't Eat the Daisies and Rally Around the Flag Boys and other shows, because I had something to show. And that's why I say, well, let me finish the story. It's kind of weird. So I never saw it because my parents would rent the theater after midnight, which is, I was already asleep. So I never saw it, but it got shown to the producers of My Three Sons. And that's how I got My Three Sons. So this thing was made in 1958. So what is that, like 60 years ago? About 2 years, I got a call from a guy, and he was a friend of mine, like literally 50, 60 years ago. And we were talking because he was in Skippy with me, played my best friend. And we were talking about it. And I said, I never got to see the show. I even went to Jackie Cooper's house twice, once in I think it was the early 80s and once in the late 80s. And we rummaged through his attic. And then the next time I came over, we rummaged through his basement or something. I don't even remember now. And we couldn't find the film reel. So anyway, we were talking. He said, well, I have a copy of it. I'm like, how do you have a copy? I was starving. And not only did I never saw it, And so he said, well, you know, where do you live? And I told him, and he said, oh, wow, well, I come down there like once a year. Why don't we get together in December? So he came down and he had it on DVD.
Wow.
So 6 years later, I finally got to see Skippy, which I starred in. My name was above the title. I was the main character. Screen time, I'm probably 90% screen time. You know?
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, it was a heck of a workload for what I had just turned 8 years old. But I'm convinced was responsible for me getting all the work. Once I finally saw it, I go, well, no wonder people were hiring me. I mean, I was pretty good. And so anyway, I'm telling the guy, yeah, it's great. I said, hey, listen, I do have other copies of this. He's saying, no, that's the only DVD. I said, well, it just so happens I have a DVD manufacturing thing. I can, you know, duplicate DVDs. I said, would you mind if I ran off a copy for myself? I said, in fact, I'll run off a bunch of them if you want some more. You know, I can run off like 20 at a time. So I did. So I had a copy. And then when the guy left, he opened up his trunk and handed me this box. And it was a film reel in it, and it was Skippy. And I think what had happened was his mom borrowed it from Jackie Cooper so that Jay, this guy's name is Jay Potter, could get work, and never returned it. That's what I'm guessing, because
Yeah.
that was the film reel. Anyway, when I finally opened the box, I knew it was curtains, because the telltale sign of film having gone bad, not being stored properly, it smells just like vinegar. So
Oh no.
I looked at it and I pulled it out, kind of looked at the frames. The film was already starting to curl, and I could see even internally as it's being wound, it was ripply looking. So I thought, well, I better just leave it in the box. And I thought maybe I could get a better copy, but actually the copy I had was pristine. They must have done it while the film was really good and made a copy off the film chain. So anyway, I finally got to see that work after 60 years and realized how and why I was being hired all the time as a kid actor. And, you know, my parents had to keep renting theaters and paying $100 to some projectionists to stay there to show the producers, but it got me a lot of work. Thank God for Jackie Cooper. Yeah. Anyway, got me My Three Sons, which was the next rung up on the ladder for me, which was a TV series starting this guy none of your people are going to know, named Fred MacMurray, who
They might.
Fred MacMurray,
They might have seen it on Nick at Night.
I mean, even when I did My Three Sons in 1960, I didn't really know Fred MacMurray. I mean, everybody's saying he's a big actor, so I knew he was that. But, you know, Fred MacMurray was a guy who had probably done 100 movies before he came to My Three Sons, and was the highest paid actor in Hollywood at that time. He was a genuine big movie star. Not like a movie star, I'm talking about big. It would be like maybe 10 years ago, if Tom Cruise or Michael Douglas said, hey, I'm not doing movies anymore, I'm just going to go do a TV series because I want to go home at night to my family. It would be like that, or maybe Mel Gibson or something.
So how much would you say a big star made back then, just out of curiosity?
Well, not only did he make a big amount of money, like I think he got paid $500,000, which, you know, $1960, that probably like making $10 million or something today.
Okay.
But he owned half the show and half the profits. So he probably made another 10 or $20 million off of that. Yeah, it was huge. But, you know, they realized they had hooked a big fish into doing this TV series, and, you know, we're doing everything. Even CBS, they were all completely beside themselves that they had this huge movie star doing a TV series. It was a real feather in their cap, and it was, you know, they'd come down and treat him like he was God. And besides that, he knew everybody in Hollywood, so we always had big movie stars, you know, dropping on the set to see Fred MacMurray, presidents and vice presidents and everybody that you knew and golfed with. Yeah,
so how was his personality being a big star? Was he
he wasn't what you thought he was. Not at all. Never had a problem. I never saw Fred ever yell, scream, meltdown. He was just the most low-key, easygoing guy. He was
like his character?
Like his character, exactly. Yeah, he was a great role model. If you're a person in showbiz or a kid, you know, thinking I'm a movie star and have a big head, well, you know, you look at him and you go, this guy really handled it right and put it all into perspective. And, you know, he didn't let things go either, though. If there was a problem, he'd address it or say something, and the director would call the producer, and the producer would call the writer, come down the set, and they'd get it resolved. But, never screaming, any kind of theatrics. It was just a good way to be. I've tried to model myself after him as best I could.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know a lot about your character from what we've seen and talked about. And I think with certain shows, well, from what I see from you and from what you're saying about Fred MacMurray, I mean, it's almost like these people that are put into these roles seem to either adapt to the character and become good and great, or they are like that, and that's why they're put in the character. So what would you say it's more of today or back then?
Well, for Fred, to be fair, he not only could do, characters like Steve Douglas on My Three Sons, which he had done before, and in my estimation, he had done a movie maybe 2 years before that I think somebody saw that and thought, that would be a good idea for a TV series. And I just think it took that long to pitch it to the network and to get him involved and for him to say yes. And it kind of went through some iterations before he agreed to do it. In fact, My Three Sons wasn't almost My Three Sons. It was almost My Four Daughters. It was going to be the Lennon sisters. And
Wow.
they didn't want to do a show. I'm not sure if Fred was involved at that point, but it was pitched that way at one point. But Fred was also this other person. Fred was also this other person and had a career for playing heavies in the movie as well as being light comedy. He was in Double Indemnity, where he's a murderer with Barbara Stanwyck, one of film classics. But he was also in The Egg and I with Claudette Colbert, which was light comedy. And then later in his career, he was doing some heavies again. Billy Wilder films. So he was doing The Caine Mutiny. He did The Apartment with Jack Lemmon for Billy Wilder again, which, he played this kind of not so nice boss who was using an employee's office to bring girls to.
Yeah.
And, but on the other side of it, he was also doing Disney films. He did the Shaggy Dog. He did the Absent-Minded Professor, Son of Flubber. Which were, light comedies. So he could segue from doing heavy drama to doing light comedy. But my feeling is, if you've ever seen the Shaggy Dog really is My Three Sons. The only thing missing is the bub character of the Uncle Charlie, but it's a guy with three sons and a dog like Tramp. It was called Hobo, I think, or something in that. But, somebody must have seen that.
So then actors are not their character, although they adapt them for a while.
No.
They have to be multiple characters. And
I think there's different kind of actors. There's actors that are they play themselves, and a lot of early actors kind of did that, like Jimmy Stewart, James Cagney, Henry Fonda. And then there's other actors who kind of could do that, but they could also go further out on a limb and, play not so great guys or kind of scary characters. And then there's the guys that just look scary. So, like Jack Palance always played a bad guy.
Yeah.
And so it depends on the range of the actor, and what they want to do with their career.
But they should be able to, I guess,
it depends on your training, that's the thing. That's, if you're going to be an actor, the first thing you should do is go get trained, because how are you going to do it unless you get trained? Where
do they go?
Acting school. Doesn't matter where you live, what town, what city, there's somebody there teaching acting. And, as the beginning of actor, you just want to get your feet wet. So it's not really critical. If you find that you take to it and like it, you'd probably stay there for a while and then move on and, maybe study in college, go to four-year college and major in, either cinema arts as an actor or theater arts. It's best if you do everything. And then from there, you probably want to go to a more prestigious acting school like the Actors Studio, or, UCLA is pretty well known for turning out actors. So is NYU. You want to go to one of the big acting schools and see if you like it.
Does it start, would you say, in high school with drama, or even before?
Even before. I mean, may not be professional acting, meaning you're getting paid for it, but the goal is to see if you like it and if you take to it. I mean, some people try it and they're no good. They just don't have what it takes to be actors. And then there's actors, this is really horrible, who really love it. It's, you know, they eat, drink, sleep acting, and they go to the best acting schools, and, you know, end up at the Beverly Hills Playhouse and do all this. And some of them are great, you know, they're good, but to get into the movie industry sometimes, you know, you're here, but you got to be there. And they just don't rise to that level. It doesn't mean you won't work. You'll still work, but, you know, to rise to the level that you need to be to work constantly or consistently is a matter of proving yourself over and over to the casting people, because they are the door to the industry. They are the gatekeepers. So you can be a great actor, but if you're lousy at auditioning, you're never going to act professionally because you can't get past the gatekeeper. You know, they decide who's going to get in and see the producer and get a chance to impress the producer. So, you know, that's why actors traditionally had, you know, they're always involved in theater. Out here in California, they have equity waiver. In New York, they have something similar where you're off Broadway. But casting people traditionally would go there and look for people that they thought were new and exciting and, you know, were delivering the goods and, you know, might have potential for a career. And, you know, they'd come backstage and meet them, give them a card, maybe bring them in, interview them. And then, you know, at that point, possibly send them out on an interview and see how they do. But, you know, what actors who don't get trained don't realize is that a casting person, when they take you on or an agent takes you on, they're only taking you because they believe in your talent.
Your natural
And,
talent.
yeah, right. Your natural or your talent that you know, learn how to act in acting school, that you became competent enough to take them out. Because when the agent calls the casting person, they're vouching for you. They're putting their reputation on the line that you're good enough that they're sending you in and you're not a waste of time. And then the casting director in turn goes, okay, I saw that person. Yeah, they seem pretty good. Calls a director or producer, says, you've got to see this person. So they're vouching for you and putting their integrity on the line. And that's really what's happening there. Not really much about you as a person, but about your ability as an actor. And you've got people that are put on the line. So if you're preparing for a part and you didn't prepare well, and you go into the room, you just embarrassed your agent, you embarrassed the casting person, and guess what? You'll never be sent out on something again. That's where the business of this comes in, of you knowing what you need to do to be a viable actor and what you're expected, what's expected of you. And, you know, if you're only doing it half-hearted, it's going to show. And the problem is the industry is just too small. You know, the word gets around, oh, this guy came in totally unprepared, or, you know, we told him he was going to be a bad guy in a film. The guy brought a gun to the casting session.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's people that bring guns and they go, I'm going to bring this gun. This will, you know, I'm going to show them I'm really into this. I'm a method actor. Meanwhile, the director and the casting person are shivering in their boots. And as soon as you leave, they go, I don't ever want to see that person again. And you're out. You're in show business and now you're out. You'll never get another casting thing for 20 years. So yeah, there's things you have to learn what is expected.
Yeah, I
And
guess
some
it
of that
works
is
that
the
way.
business side of this. Yeah, it's not just the acting part, but there's protocols and a business side of things that you can do and can't do, or should do and shouldn't do.
Like
A
if
lot
you're
of times,
Disney, you can't go and take your clothes off for another movie or go
yeah,
get
or you know, you may walk in and they'll say, "Would you take your clothes off now and let us inspect you?" And you know, you should know to say no.
right.
You
No,
know,
I'm
or talk to
saying,
my
but
agent.
you also have an image once you get to that level, is what I was getting at. That, you know, if you're acting and you're working, you really do have to watch what you do.
Yeah,
Because
I mean, once you get to a certain level, you can destroy your career in a night by, you know, getting drunk at a party and killing 4 people in a car. You know, that's the end of your career, basically. Or,
right.
you know, just being seen with the wrong people, or, you know, who knows? There's just so many things you can do that'll just overnight take your career out, because it's, at best, your whole career, it's tenuous anyway.
Right.
They're just waiting for you to show up and not know your lines. Well, that gets around. You'll never be hired again. You know, even if you've been doing it 20 years, they go, something happened. The guy has dementia now, or, you know, their brain went bad. And they tell everybody else you just can't get an interview. I mean, I've known people that worked and then just couldn't get an interview anymore, just stopped.
So today, kids do need agents?
In the old days, the only way to get out on an audition was to have an agent. You had to go through an agent, sometimes a manager, otherwise you weren't getting in the door. These days, you're expected to kind of be combing the, as best you can find out about projects. And if there's something that sounds like, wow, this is like perfect for me, to let your agent know. Or if you can meet that person, somehow convince the casting person to see you, even though you're not coming through an agent, they'll deal with the agent later. Then, you're expected to do half the work. Where in the old days, it was, you couldn't get in. Basically it's 100% through the agent.
First, let's start, before we get into the actor's journey, which you did. Let's talk about your career. So you had a 12-year sitcom. How did that work?
It worked out well.
Family with everybody? Are you still in contact with those people?
Yeah. Well, some of them, obviously, right? Fred MacMurray passed away in '92, and I think the original grandfather on the show, William Frawley, passed away in the mid-'60s, so he died while we were doing the show. The guy that came in, took his place, was Uncle Charlie, who he was around, I think, till the late '80s. And then, unfortunately, one of the sons, the actual sons, Robbie, Don Grady, passed away in 2012. So the only people really left on the show are myself, my real brother, Barry, who played my brother on the show. He was Ernie, the one with the glasses. And then the original older brother, Tim Considine, played Mike, who coincidentally was in The Shaggy Dog. Yeah. And then Tina Cole, who was the woman who was married to Robbie, and they had the triplets. So Tina Cole is her name, and she's still around. So yeah, well, obviously I see my brother, Tim Considine. Until COVID came along, I probably saw a couple times a year, and we're Indy 500 fans, so we go to Indy 500 probably every other year or so. Tina I see sometimes at autograph shows, but those are kind of on ice for now too. But yeah, that's about it,
Was she in your video?
Yeah, she is. Yeah, she was in it. Tim was in it. Don was in it. These are people that did movies, did TV shows, a lot of work. So they had a lot of information to impart to new actors.
Let's talk about your career first. How was it growing up on a set? What was a day like? And how long was a day?
Well, yeah, day for me.
You were running around meeting
because if you're a minor, you have to go to school 3 hours a day. And so I had a tutor there. Some days I got to put the whole 3 hours in before I was called to work on the set. And then some days I was in every scene starting from 8 o'clock on. But I would you'd walk their scene and block it, and you change your clothes. And then I go back to the schoolroom, and they would have to leave me in the schoolroom for a minimum of 15 minutes. Then they could call you out. So some days I got my 3 hours in 15-minute increments. And instead of doing 3 hours between 8 and 11, I'd be going to school from 8 o'clock till 5 o'clock.
Oh my gosh.
Just as I could to get those 3 hours in. Fortunately, that wasn't the norm. A lot of times you'd get an hour at a pop, so you'd get it over with pretty quickly. It was good, but you have to remember, I had like a 9-10-year-old kid, and I'm on a set with adults all day. There were no kids.
Well, what about Ernie?
On the show. Well, yeah. Ernie wasn't in the beginning of the show. Ernie came in about the 3rd, 4th year as a friend of mine. And occasionally there would be episodes where there were other kids my age. But they would usually hire a separate teacher for them. And I just had the one lady who was my tutor. So, the only time I got to horse around with these kids was after everybody's school was in or while we were rehearsing. And, that was fun for me. And then finally my brother became kind of a recurring character as a friend on the show. He lived down the street. And he was in the same schoolroom as me because, it was my brother, so they weren't going to hire another teacher for him. And then eventually the guy who played the older brother, Tim Considine, decided to leave the show. The show was called My Three Sons. We needed a 3rd son in a hurry, and they concocted a plot line where Ernie was this foster kid, and his parents were going to leave the country, and they couldn't take him. And the Douglas family, we adopt him, and he officially becomes the 3rd son. So on screen, he became, you know, my on-screen brother, but in real life, you know, it meant that we could now drive to work together. We shared a dressing room. You know, I had somebody to play with, and Barry had somebody to play with, although a lot of the stuff we did got taken away, you know, like skateboarding, riding bicycles, and baseball, because we were breaking windows, and some other kids that we were skateboarding with that were on the Lucy show crashed into something and broke their leg. And, you know, yeah, there's all kinds of, you know, they pretty much wanted us to be knitting as a sport. That was safe. Nobody could break any bones doing that.
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, the show, though, from the beginning, we never knew. You know, when we went on, we didn't know we were going to go 12 years. When the season was over, we'd leave, say goodbye to everybody. Like you're saying goodbye, I'll never see you again. And then somewhere early in the next year, they would decide to renew the show, and we'd get a telegram saying, you know, welcome back. We're going to do a second season of My Three Sons, a third season, a fourth season. And that went on for 12 years, with every year not knowing if we were coming back or not.
So wait, so you went from 9 years old for 12 years.
Mm-hmm.
So you
Yep.
grew up on the set.
Yeah, I was about 22, 23 by the time we stopped filming. So literally had my whole life, you know, from that period of time on camera every year. You know, it's pretty weird.
Did you start dabbling, like trying to see what kids, you know, wanting to see everything. You were running around meeting Lassie and Mr. Ed and all these great things.
Where we shot, they had a lot of shows that were, you know, on other sound stages. We were at what was then called Desilu's studio, which formerly had been RKO. RKO was the studio that Howard Hughes owned, and he sold it to Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, and it became Desilu. But on other sound stages, they were shooting other TV series that were kind of concurrent with ours. So up the street was Hogan's Heroes. Next to him was My Favorite Martian. There was kind of a medical drama up the street called Ben Casey. There was The Untouchables. There was Star Trek. All these different shows that were being shot. So yeah, when we didn't have anything to do, we would hang out with the people on other sets and just kind of watch them film, or, you know, talk to them or whatever. And yeah, that, you know, that's what we did. Well, we were at Desilu for 7 years. Then they moved production to the Valley, San Fernando Valley from Hollywood, at the old, what was that, 4-Star Republic Studios, which was a studio where they shot a lot of the early Westerns for TV, Wanted Dead or Alive, Gunsmoke.
Oh.
And yeah, so we went there. By then it was called CBS Cinema Center, and the producer moved it there. I think not just because of My Three Sons, but he was going to produce a couple other shows. Well, he was producing one by then called Family Affair. And I guess they got a better deal on the sound stages there. And then he did The Smith Family, To Rome with Love, you know, these TV series that were kind of had a dad and then a grumpy grandfather and 3 kids, whatever, 3 girls, a mix of girls and guys, but pretty much the same formula. They all were on TV. Of course, the Smith Family had Ronnie Howard in it. That was kind of cool. And the dad was Henry Fonda. And To Rome with Love, trying to think who was the dad. John Forsythe was the dad in that. And one of them had, I think it was Walter Brennan. So he, you know, was kind of the Uncle Charlie for that show. Yeah, they were, you know, they're all good shows. But what was another show? Wild Wild West. Was shooting across, so I'd go over and hang out with Bob Conrad. At lunchtime, he'd always beat up a crew guy. He was a wannabe boxer, was a pretty good boxer. So he had a boxing ring set up on an empty stage. And like I said, he would bring some crew guy over there and beat him up at lunch hour every day. Sometimes I go to lunch with the people on Family Affair, you know, Kathy Garver, Sebastian Cabot, played, what was he, Mr. French.
Yeah.
Or the directors, you know, I was just starting to get interested in behind the scenes stuff. So
that's what I was going to ask you. Did you start like trying to talk to the cameramen and see how they were doing the shots? And
yeah, that's when when I was about 16, 17, I got interested in behind the camera. And it was a great place to be because they had all these, you know, older crew guys. Some of them had won Academy Awards as cinematographers and the sound guy. And editing guys, you know, so I learned all that stuff from them, you know, over the years, and learned the ropes when we were shooting in film. It was a different era. But, you know, what's a film stock? What are the different film stocks? The cameras, you know, the different lenses and why you would use a different lens and what it does. Parallax, you know, all the different things that are related to the technical side of shooting, and then the production side of shooting. You know, from the production manager we had, who kind of became a mentor of mine, a guy named John Stevens, who was our production manager. But the reality was he was what would have been called a line producer, probably in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. But you know, he really made the show happen, you know, the nuts and bolts of the day-to-day operations. The real producer was kind of more oriented with the story and, you know, getting the story right, rewriting and all that. And yeah, this guy, John Stevens, taught me everything I know about, you know, production boards, how to set up schedules, how to break down scripts, all that stuff. And we were friends until he just passed away about, I guess, about 2 years ago now.
Oh, sorry.
Just the nicest guy. But after My Three Sons, he went on, he produced, I think, the last year or two of Gunsmoke. And then he produced, what else? Simon and Simon was a TV series called Simon and Simon. There was a TV series called Major Dad that he created and was the producer of. And then he did a bunch of TV movies. So, and again, he was another super easygoing guy, but really firm and strict. I mean, you know, but he just had the best persona. So I've tried to model myself after him. I just thought he did the best job I've ever seen as a production manager.
So what else have you done besides My Three Sons? Have you done movies?
I did a movie called Checkers a while back. That was an actual feature film, a lot of music videos, commercials, TV pilot. I did a TV pilot with Sherman Hemsley a way back. Trying to think what else. And then that, well, and then I have other things that are kind of sitting here on ice because of COVID. And then I kind of went off on a sidetrack with that actor's journey thing, which took about
We're going to get
5
there
years
right
out of
now.
my life. Yeah, yeah.
So,
well, it was something I wanted to put back into the industry. You know, I saw some issues for actors, and it always bothered me that all these actors would go to acting school and spend anywhere from a couple $1,000 at a mom and pop place to, you know, Beverly Hills Playhouse, or a couple thousand, 4,000 or 5,000, you know, to learn how to act. Or you go to Yale and Harvard, you're dropping $100 grand a year,
wow.
you know, to go there. And they all come out the same. They're learn craft. They learn about the art and craft of acting, you know, whether they're on stage or in front of a camera. And none of them have the faintest idea of what you do to get into the industry and how to perpetuate a career, how to ignite a career, and how to keep it going, and what this means, what that means. And there's nobody to tell you. Unfortunately, each actor, for that aspect of it, meaning the non-performance side of your career or the business side, it's just not taught. They, you know, teach a smattering of it, which is, okay, get a reel, get a resume, get your headshot, try and get an agent, try and get into the Screen Actors Guild. Yeah. Well, that was a headshot of me. We actually did 2 projects. We did one for, you know, child actors, meaning you're a baby to up to 17 years old. And it's, although it's called The Actor's Journey for Kids or Kids and Teens, it's really directed at the parents, because obviously if you're 6 years old, you're not going to get yourself into showbiz. You have no idea about the business aspects of it, and you're not even legally responsible for yourself. So all the material was geared for the parents who want to involve their children in the industry, and to try and give them some depth and breadth of information related to the business side of this, because there are a lot of irreputable companies out there that will take advantage of you, meaning they will take your money, and you can be sold a bill of goods where nothing's going to be happening. Sometimes you get a smattering of acting, which is good, but you know, they basically kind of string you along and tell you about all the great things you're going to be doing, and none of it ever happens. And that's usually how people get their feet wet in the business. Their
How do you
companies.
know that they're fake though? Like you see on,
It's pretty hard for a beginner to tell, but you would know because stuff's not happening the way it should. You know, you'll be in there taking classes and it never happens, or they're going to tell you they're going to have scene nights and invite people from the industry. And sometimes they get people to come there, but then, you know, your job is to figure out who they brought there and what their credits are. So a lot, you know, some of it is just so sketchy, I call it, you know, where they go, oh, we have the person who was there when they cast, I don't know, pick some movie,
yeah.
Little Miss Sunshine. Well, yeah, they worked for the casting person, and they were the person who was sorting the pictures or putting the pictures on the internet, you know, listing them for that agency, but they're not really the agent. Some of these people inflate their position, and they're not really had anything to do with the casting other than actually working for the company that did while somebody from that agency was hired. So, you know, what I find with the parents, they don't want to do their homework at all. And that's how they get taken advantage of, or the child does get a part and makes 10 grand and, you know, they spend it all. And then they find out at the end of the year, well, you know, even though your kid was 6 years old, the IRS comes knocking. And just because it's a kid, you owe, you know, $4,000, $4,500 tax. You spent all the money, you know, so that happens quite a bit too. So
tell us about the actor's journey.
The actor's, it's similar but different. The difference is the actor's journey for kids is for child actors. Like I said, infant through 17. Some people actually involve their infants in the business. And there's things you got to know, because if you don't know, you'll spend an 8-hour day on the set with your infant when you're only supposed to be there a couple hours. It's not allowed with infants. And even with kids, their time on the set is limited to, you know, 8 hours plus lunch, and only 5 hours working, because 3 of that has to be for schooling. But there's companies out there that don't obey the rules and will say, can you stay later? Could you stay at 8 o'clock? And you're, as a parent, supposed to say no. But if you don't know, you're supposed to say no, or they con you into saying yes. You know, who the person that's suffering is the kid. That's not the way it should work. The actor's journey is for adult actors, meaning you've turned 18 already. Why? Because when you're 18, you're an adult. You're not going to be conferring with your parents. Your parents have nothing to do with it. You're legally responsible for yourself and your career, and you're doing everything for yourself at that point on. So that's the demarcation line between leaving being a child actor and becoming an adult actor. And then there's this weird little area in there when you're 15, 16, you're probably not going to work. Why? Because it's easier to hire an 18-year-old and you can work them for 20 hours a day, where if you're, you know, like a week before you're 18, they still can only, you know, work you 5 hours a day, and you got to go home by 6 o'clock. You still have to get your schooling in. So yeah, that there's a thing there. The other thing is most actors, if you're lucky enough to go on beyond being a child actor, you're going to spend the rest of your life being an adult, which means, you know, how long are you a kid? You know, for the time say you start when you're 5 or 6 and you go to your 18. So what's that, like 12 years? Well, as an adult, your career may go from the time you're 18 to, I just had a friend pass away he was 88. So that's 60 years. And he worked all the time. Kind of pulled up the list of people that were in there. Yeah, we had quite a few. It's a lot of actors, but not just actors. Because see, the whole idea of this is not to get your information only from actors. I picked actors that I knew had 20, 30 years in the industry, because they'd been through everything and can really impart a lot of knowledge to actors about what this means, or how to relate to that, or how to act when this happens, or how to prepare, you know, yourself, you know, to do this line of work. But, you know, I wanted it to be a plethora of point of views, because, you know, when you're in show business, it's not just actors. You're actually the smallest part of it. There's directors, producers, showrunners, executive producers, casting directors, casting agents, managers,
writers,
talent agents, and they all have a different point of view of actors and want different things from actors. And that's what I wanted to bring to this, was all these plethora of point of views of the same thing, because, you know, a director wants something completely different from you than, say, the casting director or your agent. So it's this whole body of people.
So do you have, so you have directors as
Oh
well?
yeah, so that's what I'm saying. It consists of a lot of actors, but I would say probably more directors, producers, showrunners, casting directors, casting agents, talent managers,
Excellent.
talent agents. Yeah, we also, when we shot, we had the president of the Screen Actors Guild. We also had the president of the Directors Guild of America, which are the two big, creative unions. And then we had I think about 8 or 10 people that sat on various boards at Screen Actors Guild too. So you really kind of get a handle. Like I said, this is all about the business side of being an actor. It's nothing to do with acting at all. Meaning when you're up on stage or you're the art and craft of acting, you can go learn that anywhere, but good luck finding a program or a course on the business side. I see there are people out there that attempt to teach it, and I look on the internet and I see people going to teach it. But here's the question: I don't know who they are. Do you know who those people are? And if they haven't had a career for 20, 30 years, what are they actually teaching you? Nobody ever asked that question. It's like, oh, this guy's teaching a business class, I'll go take him. Well, that guy just got here from Kentucky about 2 or 3 months ago, went on a couple of interviews, and now he's going to teach you the business of acting. Wouldn't you rather learn that from somebody who's been doing this 30 years, or the president of the Screen Actors Guild talking to you? Or same thing with the president of the Screen Actors Guild. Basically, it's the difference between getting it from somebody who has no experience to impart and getting it from the horse's mouth from people that have been doing this 20, 30 years. And that was the criteria I used in bringing the people in.
My whole career has been looking for the weakness in the wall that stands between you and the rest of your career. If you will it, it is not a dream. If you know what you want and you believe that you've really got something to say, that you just don't want, you cannot just want to be a star. You can't just want the glitz around or the perceived glitz of being a star. If you want to do that, you should dream about it. You should stay home and sell insurance in Ohio. I'm not kidding. But if you know that you've got this burning desire that you need to be in the industry and to contribute, to say something, to illuminate the world, then you don't take your eye off that prize. You don't take your eye off what it is you want, and you go after it. And I'm telling you that there is, and you never know where it's going to come or what size it will be or exactly what the key is going to look like. But there is a door that you will be able to open, and you will be able to live your dream.
Well, everybody, Stanley Livingston, is there any, thank you so much for sharing. Is there any advice you want to give the young actors or business production people out there?
Yeah,
aspiring
following your
directors?
dream, do it till it's not your dream anymore. And, if you can swing it and have that interest, it doesn't hurt in being interested in other things outside of show business too, in case it doesn't work out. Or even if it does work out, there's, people that have law degrees that are actors, senators that have become actors, but I think makes you more diversified if you have lots of interests and you can draw on that and bring that to your world of acting, whether you like sports or whether you like other things in life, or you're an expert on something else. That's something to bring. If you're only bringing your acting and yourself, that's pretty thin. So, you should have a complete world and lots of activities and lots of things that you like to do and learn about. And those are the things you draw upon in life that you bring as an actor. So that's my advice.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Stan.
Thank you, Marianne, for having me on. And, you're doing good work too with your Teen Say and all the things that you do. So I know you're a real go-getter. So go get them.